lawmakers in Louisiana wanted to create legislation and pass the bill that would protect women who have been victims of domestic violence. Now, it's interesting that the NRA wanted to get involved in this, especially when you consider the gun violence used against women in Louisiana and how high the rate is. Well, the NRA got involved not because they care so much about protecting women who are victims of stalking and domestic violence. They got involved because they were very much concerned that the suspects in cases like this would have their guns taken away. And, you know, the NRA can't have that. Now, it's really fascinating how they did this. Apparently, they were looking into Louisiana's House Bill 488, which would have provided additional protective measures for victims of domestic abuse, and was gutted because the NRA thought it went too far when it included dating partners along with household members. Now, understand the distinction. This legislation was supposed to protect women who were victimized by either people they were dating but not living with, and also their spouses, people that they were living with. Now, the NRA got involved and they're like, why don't we exempt the people who don't live with these women? How about that? The NRA didn't want to increase the pool of people who will be dispossessed of their firearms. They removed dating partner from the list of victims of domestic abuse and battery, which means domestic violence victims who don't live with their abusive partner don't receive the same protections. This is in a state where 50% of domestic violence victims qualify as dating partners who live apart from their abuser. Now, we have some pretty crazy statistics on gun violence involved in these domestic cases. We'll get to that in a second, but Ben, jump in. What do you think about all this?
I mean, you know, the depravity of the NRA knows no bounds. Like, you can't formulate a thoughtful policy that just says if you are convicted of domestic violence and battery, you can't have a gun. What is so, like, that just seems like a bare minimum.
Why is that controversial?
What? There's nothing controversial about this. So now you're going to want, what? So these women should, right before they file a domestic violence, ask the guy to move in. Then you can get the proper protection so he might not come back and kill you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have the statistics here, but I mean, Louisiana's rank as far as number of people, deaths per capita from guns, and women who are the victims of domestic violence is staggering.
So let's take a look at that. So more deaths per capita from guns than any other state. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that all those cases involve domestic violence. However, it's the fourth highest rate of women killed by men. 2/3 occurred with a firearm. So guns are actually a big issue here. And basically what the NRA is saying, and what they're implying, in not so many words, but it's very obvious, is, look, we're paid by gun manufacturers. We want to ensure that as many people as possible have access to firearms in this country, so gun manufacturers in the country can make as much money as possible. So as a result, we don't really care about stalking. We don't really care about domestic violence. We don't really care about keeping people safe. And remember, that's always their talking point. We need these guns to keep people safe. If they genuinely cared about that, then they would not be in favor of giving those who are convicted of domestic violence access to firearms.
People convicted of domestic violence is the definition of a bad guy with a gun. It's the definition of it. According to a spokesperson for the NRA, instead of taking guns away from hotheads and convicted creeps, Louisiana lawmakers should toughen enforcement of restraining orders. That's what a spokesperson for the NRA.
Toughen the restraining orders, but give everyone guns.
Because a guy who has been convicted of battery of his girlfriend, right, if the restraining order is toughened, right, is going to say, I'm thinking of going by and killing my girlfriend, but I don't want to violate that restraining order, so I'm not going to do it, is absurd on its face. If you're capable of committing a murder, you're not going to get held back by the restraining order. It is incredibly dishonest, and somebody's going to get killed. And they should be, you know, this is an opportunity right here. Usually, when you say there's a policy decision and it's going to result in somebody's death, you know, these policy decisions are complicated. Many of those deaths would have happened anyway. I don't like blood on the hands argument. But at some point, someone who would have lost a gun will not lose a gun, and they'll use it to kill somebody. And that's that. And that'll be on them.
And I'll leave you with this statistic. Gun murder rate 2.5 times higher than the U.S. average. So in Louisiana, the gun murder rate 2.5 times higher than the U.S. average. And remember, the U.S. average isn't so great.
Right. This is not. Right. This is not. We got it. We have a solid gun death batting average.